Fish on First has partnered with About the Fans to launch a merchandise collection. Rep the FOF logo in more Marlins-inspired apparel. Find it all at aboutthefans.com. Enter coupon code FOF10 at checkout to get 10% off your order. FOF10 for a 10% discount.
This is Griffin Conan.
This is Xavier Edwards.
This is Liam Hicks.
This is Dave Myers, and you're watching Fish on First live.
Hello and welcome to this edition of FOF Live, presented by About the Fans. As always, you can check out About the Fans for their brand new Fish on First merchandise collection. You can get your hats, your t-shirts, player-specific merchandise as well, and use the code FOF10 at checkout for 10% off your order. As always, I'm your host, Daniel Rodriguez. We have Eli Sussman, Nate Karsmer. Hopefully later, Kevin and Isaac will join us for this episode of FOF Live, as we will be going through this series coming up between the White Sox and the Marlins. Just for those of you watching, the game is not tonight. The game is tomorrow, but it is an off day for the Marlins, so might as well have this little extra time to talk about this series and what happened with the Dodgers. Eli, let's first go into you as we're joined by Mr. Kevin Barral, I just mentioned earlier. Eli, the Marlins faced off against the Dodgers a couple weeks ago. They were in LA, did not do well. This series, they did a little bit better. They got a win, but at the same time, there was a lot of controversy amongst maybe how the umpiring went for one of the games, a decision with Valiente Belloso, and just overall the Marlins' inability to stop that Dodgers lineup, and specifically Shohei Ohtani, who just has that magic whenever he's at Lone Depot Park.
Yeah, the head-to-head numbers, I'll start with Ohtani because ultimately he's the one that has to produce in order for this stuff to matter, and he was the MVP of this series by our calculations. His career numbers against the Marlins are just ridiculous, and especially at Lone Depot. They're juiced up a little bit by the 50-50 game last year, but like this series was not a huge step down from that. Let's see, across the 3 games, 4 for 11 with a double, a triple, 2 homers. All of his hits were extra base hits, and he walked 4 times, and he stole a base, and he was caught stealing by Agustin Ramirez. So it was not a perfect series from him, but a pretty good one. I thought the umpiring in each of the last 2 games was kind of suspect behind the plate. One that the strike zone that set up his home run in that middle game, and then even over the course of that final, when this game really got away from them in the later innings, same thing with that. As you alluded to, I think a lot of the focus is on the turning point of that final game, the rubber game, which was tied into the 6th inning against a lot of other people's expectations because of how awesome Valiente Belloso was. You could argue that was his best start in the big leagues, and the bar is kind of high. He had some great starts last year as well. This one, just 1 hit allowed in 5 1/3 innings. And then right before the lineup flips over, going to the pen, immediately the Marlins fall behind. They had a chance to catch up in the bottom of that inning, but then they don't take advantage of that, and it really gets away from them in the 7th after that. So Clayton spoke about it. Belloso offered comments in support of the move right there. But to me, like, I thought that was a case where they very clearly made it's not only about what you think might go wrong with the starter in the game, but it's also understanding who your alternatives are. And in this case, when the alternative is Cade Gibson, the guy who had 1 previous game, a big league experience, somebody that the Marlins thought so lowly of a couple months ago that he was not in big league spring training. He was not even remotely close to the conversation of putting together the roster entering this season. And yet he's the one that comes into that game in what is a high leverage situation, even in the 6th, to face 3 consecutive amazing hitters at the top of the Dodgers lineup just because he throws with his left hand. That's essentially the thinking there. It's because he is left-handed. That was the option that the Marlins preferred. I thought that was just really flawed logic. So I think we could get into it a little bit. It's just a bummer because, as we've been hammering home, such a big issue with this Marlins team all year has been the starting rotation. It has been the worst in baseball. And now back-to-back days, they got a pretty decent start from Cal Quantrill the previous day, and then this one ups the standard even higher. So to finally get a great start from one of their pitchers and then for it to all go to waste, for it to end in a laughter, to get completely out of hand in the end. That's one of those losses that I think stings more than most of the other ones.
Yeah, I want to go to Nate, talking about maybe the Marlins from this side. What did you see in this series specifically for the Marlins compared to when they faced the Dodgers in LA? Did you see any improvements at all, or do you see maybe more of the same than what we saw at Dodger Stadium?
I think they were a lot more competitive, mostly in that second game. It took them 5 times to beat the Dodgers this season, and it really took pretty much every player on the roster, from Liam Hicks to Jesus Tinoco to Dan Myers to Jesus Sanchez in the 10th. That was an amazing game. I think that was the win of the year, and just the way everyone came together. That was the happiest I've seen. I think that was the most clutch I've seen the team all season, in my opinion. Just like I said, especially for Clayton, the team that he came from, got kind of beat down in LA, kind of beat down the first game, and then they all came out the second game and really rallied. And even in the third game, when Beoza he dealt and the offense almost had him in there, but bottom of the order couldn't really get it done. But the middle of the order pretty much kept him in that game, and Beoza just dealed. But yeah, just competed a lot. I was impressed most of that second game, though.
Yeah, as we're joined now by Isaac, let me go to Kevin first since he was waiting for a bit. Kevin, on this side of the Marlins, tell me about the pitching side. I think maybe one pitcher most of us might be a little bit surprised who had a decent start was Cal Quantrill. I know we just talked about Beoso, but Quantrill also had a decent start as well. Easily his best start on the season with five innings, 1 earned run, and 6 Ks.
Yeah, he needed that because, geez, that you've been terrible the last 2 starts. So really needed that one. It's this one and the one against the Braves that have been his best too. And if you get this version of Quantrill, hopefully against it should be Chicago to open up that series against the Cubs. Then you'll take that for sure. And it's a really good offense. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I mean, this is a guy who came in to 8 innings, and that's what they need him to do. They need him to go 5-6 innings per start. It doesn't really matter how many runs he gives up. Of course, you don't want him to give up that many, but he was really good against the Dodgers, and he made the needed adjustments. And you saw it going from facing that same exact lineup. It's hard to, I guess, adjust in this league, and we've seen it with certain players, but Quantrill was able to do it, and unfortunately for LA, they weren't able to do it. And yeah, I mean, he was pretty good. You needed that from him. Nothing crazy, but you'll take it. You'll take that start from Quantrill.
Let's go. I want to hear Isaac's opinion, especially on that last start with Beoso and what happened with Clayton. Isaac, what did you see maybe first off from that game? It just seemed like it was the tale of 2 halves. You have the first 5 innings where it was, oh man, the Marlins can actually take this series, to once Beoso was out, it just seemed like, oh, the Marlins were out of it almost instantly.
Yeah, I never thought I'd say this, but it seemed like the Los Angeles Dodgers seemed relieved when Valente Beoso exited the ball game. They just could not get anything going. Beoso's game plan was working to perfection against that lineup. He was obviously not going to let Ohtani beat him, and he was navigating through the rest of that lineup, featuring many future Hall of Famers, and he was keeping them to 1 hit through 5 1/3. Then, of course, when Austin Barnes is retired in the top of the 5th, in the top of the 6th, I'm sorry, that is 2 times through the lineup, and that's it. That's his cutoff. No matter what, no matter how good he looks, they are not going to let this guy face a lineup a 3rd time through. In my opinion, I would have let him at least face the top of that order again. You knew the game plan was working, but unfortunately, the numbers say do not let opponents see him a 3rd time, as the slugging percentage almost triples compared to the first time through the order for Beoso. But other than that, Miami's offense didn't do much to help him either. If maybe they had a couple runs on the board against, I think it was Knack, starting pitcher, then maybe they're a little bit more lenient with letting him face Ohtani and Betts in that top of the 6th inning. But both sides of the ball did not go well, especially after that. You see Lake Bacher give up 6 runs, and that's sort of like the consequence for not really letting any of your starting pitchers, aside from Sandy, go deep into ball games. You're needing 4 or 5 innings from your bullpen every single game, and then you're going to see a lot of fatigue with guys like Bacher and guys like Veneziano. It's just not going to work. It's not sustainable over a long period of time, unfortunately.
And I think the big issue with that too is, like, and no disrespect to Cade Gibson, I mean, the guy's making a 2nd ever appearance in Major League Baseball, and I know you go with the lefty there, but I mean, they've been talking big game about like Bacher, and I know he's the one who ended up, blowing the game up, but someone who they talk about a lot, saying he can neutralize righties and lefties, a guy who's pretty neutral for the most part, probably could have gone with him in that situation instead of Beoso, and I don't know, and I think this is a tweet from one of the Dodgers beat writers. It may have been Fabian Ardaya. he said like it was calculated. Like this was perfectly calculated. He was going to go out there, face the lineup exactly 2 times through the order, as you said, Isaac. And unfortunately, the explanations from both Clayton and Beozo were just pretty calculated as well as what it seemed like. They knew exactly what they were going to say. It was not a good explanation, in my opinion, at all. And Isaac pressured both of them pretty well in that press conference to see if they could say something. It was asked many different ways, and every single way it was a good decision. We trust Cade. And Cade Gibson had to face 3 future Hall of Famers, and all 3 future Hall of Famers got to Cade Gibson as well as he could have expected. I mean, it was a terrible decision, in my opinion, and I never thought we'd be defending Valente Beozo to go out there for a 6th inning of work, but he was mowing down the Dodgers lineup, and I'm curious, like if this is another pitcher, does he do it? Like if this is Quantrill, would he do that? Like if this is Edward Cabrera, would he do that? Like I don't know. And Eli, we were noting this yesterday. Like Beozo threw 87 pitches to start before that, so it wasn't anything about length of start or how many pitches he's on. Like this guy was terrible. I know at the end of the day, in hindsight, who cares? But they had a chance to win that game, and if you have a chance to win, you got to keep your guy out there. And sometimes you got to go with the role of just the feeling of the game instead of the numbers. And this is one of those cases where you let Beozo face Ohtani, Betts, and Freeman.
Well, to answer your question, he had the same opportunity the day before with Quantrill. Quantrill got through 5, and Ohtani was leading off the 6th, and he took him out for lefty. Right. And first pitch off Anthony Veneziano hit it to the Corona sign in right field. So he had the same opportunity again the day after with a different guy. I mean, if you're not going to do it with Quantrill, I don't see why you do it for Beozo, but I disagree with both times. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? He hits a solo home and you take him out, or he gets on and you take him out. I think it gets to a point where you have to have feel and believe in your guy, especially with a guy like Quantrill, who's seen the Dodgers plenty of times. I know the 3rd time through the order, the analytics say, especially for a guy like Quantrill and Beozo, they might tee off on him. But I mean, Beozo's one hitting, and Quantrill's had his best start of the year. And I thought you learned less from the day before, but I guess not. And that really that did kind of piss me off. I'm not going to lie. And then with Bacher, I mean, he's the month of May has been really rough to him. But you're going to keep throwing him out there. Bullpen's going to be exhausted. And just like Tommy Hutton said on the broadcast, some of you guys caught that, and he pretty much just said what I said. Yeah, I mean, if you keep taking your starters out before they go 6, your bullpen's going to be exhausted. And I got him yesterday, and I got him on Tuesday also.
And you know what? For what it's worth, like Veneziano had been really good up to that point in the year, and I know he'd given up a couple. He faced Ohtani, I think, more than any other reliever in that bullpen. Honestly, close to that. So that's that one. Like, yeah, I agree. Like, you don't take Quantrill out there, but at least it was like Veneziano, more of an established guy who you trust in that situation. You went with Cade Gibson. Like, that guy was literally throwing his 2nd ever career game, got called up that same day. Like, come on. You go with Bacher in that situation, worst comes to worst. But, again, should have taken either out. I don't know how much of it is Clayton's call. Doesn't seem like much of it is, because the explanation obviously goes to show that Clayton McCullough maybe doesn't know what he's saying or what he has to say in those press conference situations. And then Beozo's response seemed pretty thought out beforehand as well. That's my other complaint about this little thing. If you're going to do it, you have to have a good explanation. Don't give us what you gave us yesterday.
Well, so I mean, in the case of Beozo, he's in a position where he doesn't know if he's going to be on the roster in a few days. He just pitched really well. He's got to do whatever they say in order to stick around a little while. I don't blame him. The last thing I want to note is just there is like, you can quantify this stuff too. Like, you could see that, not just seeing, but you can measure the fact that Beozo was on his game in this one. His fastball velo was way higher than in any other start of his major league career, and his command was good. His kick change, we haven't talked about it since spring training, but he tweaked his changeup in a way that has been really effective so far, and it was getting swings and misses, and he was locating that pretty well. So the risk is always going to be there. Anybody that you bring in the face of Ohtani, you're at risk of allowing an extra base hit or a home run, or something that's pretty close to a home run. Especially with Beozo, that's the risk that you take. It's all about the alternatives that you have there. And I just do not see why they thought, you can make the case for somebody else. In my specific opinion, what I would have done is I would have kept him there for Ohtani and Mookie. And if he retires both of them in order, great.
Well, that would have been the inning.
If one of them reaches base, then to finish off the inning, then maybe you go to the pen and bring somebody in to deal with Freddie Freeman. But yeah, so this is just, I guess it's splitting hairs, because it's not like I was expecting Beozo to stick in for a lot longer. It's really just a matter of a couple batters, one way or the other. But in my opinion, like there's no bottom line is there's no easy answer to the third time through the order when the top of the order looks like this. There's no easy answer, but I just thought that was the worst option that they could have gone with in that situation.
Yeah, remember this is the Rays way, and the Tampa Bay Rays, they did this with Blake Snell. They did this in the World Series in 2020. The exact same thing. The second time through, that's it for one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball. So the only thing I can say to you guys and to the fans listening is that get used to it, because this is the way. They will not let certain guys face a lineup a third time through, no matter if he's dealing. And if you guys recall, Blake Snell was dealing. And he's not, this isn't a Valente Belloso situation. It was Blake freaking Snell. And they still pulled him out. And it almost, ironically, against the Dodgers, it almost ended the same exact way. The Dodgers scored right away. So it's frustrating nevertheless.
I want to go to Eli really quickly. I know you mentioned Belloso and his thing. You know, they have him out there. They leave him in there in the sixth. I know Isaac, Kevin, and I were in the press box. We were like, oh my God, they're going to have Belloso go out there and face these guys. He go ahead and gets Austin Barnes out. And then we ultimately see, okay, yeah, you don't want him to go through the order again. And everything happens with Cade Gibson. But Eli, I want to ask you, what do you think of this thinking? Like you mentioned before, that they already had it planned. Belloso is not going to go a third time through the order. We already have it set. You're going to go ahead and face these guys twice. What do you think of this line of thinking organizationally, where it's like, we already have a plan set for you. You could be throwing a no-hitter. You could be throwing a perfect game. Whatever the case may be, you will not be seeing the order three times.
Man, it is increasingly common across the game, not only for the hyper analytic teams. It also is depending a little bit on the game situation. If they score, they have a lead in that situation, especially if they have a substantial lead, then I'm sure the math is different. If they're up 6-0 in that exact same spot, then I think it's very likely that Belloso stays in longer. So that's part of the equation too. So you need your offense to pick it up. That has been somewhat under the radar this year, how bad the Marlins lineup has been early on in games. They've been amazing late in games. They've been awful early in games. So they're very frequently at these deficits. That has kind of gone into some of the decisions, the unpopular decisions that have been made, because they're so often trailing in the middle innings or tied at the very best in the middle innings. So that puts more pressure on you to go to your bullpen, because you're worried, wow, this starter makes just a little mistake, and all of a sudden this close game becomes a not so close game after all. So I just think that's one element. And it is hard to know at this moment how much that weighs into their thinking, just because they haven't had many reps in that situation. They haven't really had many games where they have a big lead in that exact spot. And I'll be curious to see exactly how it plays out, because understandably, yeah, it would be very frustrating if they actually were up several runs in this situation and the same thing happens and they end up blowing it because they took out the guy that was actually performing well. So I will reserve judgment a little bit on that. Hoping that there are some examples coming up where they actually are in a comfortable position moving forward. Maybe this next series against the White Sox will give us at least one example of the Marlins taking a multi-run lead into the middle innings and see how that affects pitching decisions. For the moment, the offense is partially responsible for that, for not performing in the early innings.
Yeah, just to touch on Belloso's post-game presser, like I understand you can undermine your manager, but just his response, I don't think any pitcher, it's one of two things. This pitcher was happy that he was taken out in that situation, and he said it was a very good decision, or as blatantly as it was, the front office had both Clayton and Valente in a room before they met with us and said, this is what you're going to say, you're going to back it up. I've never seen anything like this.
I think he's just happy he's getting playing time. Sorry to cut you off. I feel like
it was like they're part of a cult, that they are having synchronized answers to the media about something so silly. I've never heard a pitcher say it was a really good decision to take me out when I'm having the start of my life. I have never heard that before in my 3-4+ years of covering Major League Baseball. But like you said, Eli and Daniel, you guys mentioned it before, he is trying his hardest to, stay on this roster. And if, doing what they say, kissing a little bit of ass can never hurt.
No, he probably made his final start, because
it did feel very culty. I'm not gonna lie, it felt very weird in that post game with Valente.
We were shocked in there seeing him. We were like, "What? Really?"
We wanted to hold a sign to Clayton saying like, "Hey, blink if you need help," because it's obviously not him talking. He is speaking through the front office of the Marlins brass, because it's not him making these decisions. He's not even making the lineup card, from what I understand.
It's also like, how do I say? Like they asked him the first question, how was Valente? And he goes into this whole thing about Beozo, and at the end, right at the end, he's like, yeah, we took him out because of this, and I was like, we didn't ask you that, but all right, like you're trying to get it out of the way. You're going to be asked that regardless because that's how it works. So Isaac was right. It took a while from first of all get to the press conference, so it made it a lot more obvious. And then obviously, yeah, Beozo. It seemed like a calculated answer, like a really thought out answer that was prepared a very long time ago.
But especially for a guy like Beozo, like last year, he's clap. He might be the most competitive pitcher on this team. He's clapping his love. He's streaming off the mound. And you're going to try and tell me that he wanted to be taken out of a start against the Dodgers with Ohtani, Betts, and Freeman coming up? I do not believe that. I'm sorry. That doesn't sound right.
And something didn't add up as well when he mentioned that. I knew, like I was prepared. I was told this from my last guy, and I asked him, I was like, "Oh, so like they told you beforehand?" No, they didn't tell me before. Like things didn't add up. They didn't really work on their synchronized answers as well as they could have, I guess. But again, they only had 10 minutes to come speak to the media because that's a major league players union rule or something. They have to come see the media within 10 minutes of final pitch. So I guess they used all the rope on that.
I think we've exhausted this topic quite enough, and I think maybe another topic we can go ahead and shift our focus into, maybe a little bit of exhaustion going into this couple months, but that's Sandy. I know MLB just came up with an article about Sandy was actually voted between executives in the Major League Baseball about as the top trade candidate, and notably enough, Luis Robert second, who maybe we'll get into a little bit as we go ahead to these lineups. But Eli, I'm sure you read this story, you read this article. Do you believe that Sandy's still the most valuable trade candidate, trade piece so far when we're getting to the deadline, or do you think this is just not seeing it on his start so far this year?
They kind of just echoed what I think reasonable-minded people that watch Sandy have been saying, which is that he's been terrible so far. Nobody's trading for him right now. The Marlins aren't going to trade him right now, but we think things are going to be fine in the near future as he gets farther away from the surgery itself and starts to just get the reps that he needs to dial back in. So there was, I think, 3 separate executives that all kind of echoed the same thing about being confident that he's going to figure it out, that it's still a really desirable asset that they're going to want. And at the same time, the fact that what alternative do the Marlins really have here in terms of that they don't want to panic into something now. And at the same time, as this year goes on, this may be his value might not get higher than it is going to be as this season plays out, assuming that he stays healthy and actually performs as it gets closer to the deadline. So I didn't say there was, I wouldn't say there was much new information. The context is that there's just not a ton of other starting pitchers available that buyers are going to be clamoring over to try to get from the teams that are presumed sellers. And that was the case heading into spring training. That seems to be the case now, where a lot of these other teams that are in last place in their respective divisions, they don't have a ton of guys that are actually available that also have this kind of upside that Sandy has. So there's not a lot of concern about him long term at the moment, but at the same time, he has removed himself from that Luis Arraez scenario that we saw last year, where because he's been so bad to this point in the year, it would be very hard for two sides to agree on his value. And I think the Marlins themselves, even if they could, they're not in a hurry to move him. I said at the start of the year, I doubt that he goes anywhere until after the All-Star game at the very least.
That was crazy.
We have 2.5 years of club control still to go, and he is still such an important figure around this organization. I think there's some element of humanity going on there where they're not just thinking about the best possible moment to move him, but I mean, if they get really overwhelmed between now and then maybe, but the way that he's performed is kind of taking that out of the equation, where they're not going to get overwhelmed by something until he actually performs. And there's just been very little from start to finish. I don't think there's been a single outing that's been great from him to this point. So maybe that changes in the very near future with the upcoming series that they have, and the fact that their schedule overall gets a little bit easier than it had been the first few months of the season, month and a half, 5.5 weeks, whatever it was. So, but yeah, at this moment, I just don't think a whole lot has changed despite the awful surface level numbers.
I think barring an injury, it's a foregone guarantee that he'll be traded before. I think it's just so much money that they would save if they trade him before the deadline, and you also get more value given the years of control. Obviously, the 2.5 is a lot better than the 2. I think there is no way in hell he's wearing a Marlins uniform in August. That's my personal opinion.
I agree, and then there's a case if they don't get the offer they want. I think he still has the 17 next year, and then you have the
they're trading
club
him.
option.
They're trading him this
Well,
year. No.
hear me out. I agree with you, but I'm just saying if they don't get the offer they want, they could wait this out a year, see how he gets going next year, still trade him, and the team that he goes to could take that club option. So, but I do agree, Sandy probably is getting traded, just hoping he gets it going, because it's at this point the stuff is there. It's just the command's not there, I guess, and then the velo's there. I mean, he's hitting 99. Yeah, it feels like he's trying to finally get on track a little bit. I think you noted it was just 2 pitches in that last start that really screwed him over. 2 terrible pitches right down the middle. Like it's as bad as it gets. So, but yeah, I think he will get traded. Let's hope it's a good package, because you think about it, he's truly the only good trade asset the Marlins have. Like, this bullpen has not been good. There's no real offensive player you could trade, and you're not trading Max Meyer. So they really got to bank on this Sandy trade.
I want to pose the same question to Nate before we get into a little bit of a prospect talk. Same question to you regarding Sandy, and maybe your opinion on what trade package can even bring into the Marlins for Sandy, even despite his trouble so far early in the year.
I think they're going to hold out until, at least, like Eli said, past the All-Star break. They're going to just get everything they can out of this guy. I think he's going to keep picking it up. The stuff is definitely there for him. He's paying 99. I think it was to Mookie in the outside corner. He paid 99. It's just so tough facing the Dodgers in back-to-back starts. And, of course, the next guy you miss right down the plate to, I think it was Freddie, right? To Freddie. And he takes deep. So it's tough. And it's got to be infuriating for a guy like Sandy, who's, like I said, such a competitor and, wants to give his all every start. But I think he's going to keep picking it up. I'm still not too worried about him. But I think once it comes to around July, mid-July, late July, couple top 100 guys at the minimum. I don't think they're going to get a Roman Anthony guy. I think Isaac talked about maybe a couple weeks ago. Unfortunately, that would be awesome. But it's going to be someone very good, maybe a couple of guys that are extremely good. I don't really have any names in mind just yet, because we don't know who's going to be contending by then. But some guy that's going to be towards the top of our prospect rankings, that's for sure. At least multiple.
Yeah, not only is the velocity still there, but the movement, that the 2-seamer movement is there, just like it was in 23 and 22. Like, I'm not concerned at all about any of the stuff. I think the long layoff. I think if he had thrown in a minor league game, or like Kyle Silas said in Unfiltered, that if the Marlins were in some sort of competitive situation in September of 2024, maybe he ramps up and throws something. I think that would have helped him out a lot mentally, because he went so long without throwing on a mound, or at least in any competitive game, that I think that maybe has something to do with it. Any environment with a bunch of fans in the stands, maybe that's affected him a little bit, because it was a very, very long time. And I think if he had thrown in a minor league game, for example, in September of 24, maybe that helps him come back, just to go into the offseason having pitched. But obviously he didn't do that, and we're seeing maybe something and being negatively affected by that.
When you talk about package, the Red Sox, I feel like that's the team. Like, they still have Marcelo Meyer, and you have Marcelo Meyer. There's a couple other guys up there, and they just lost Walker Buehler for some time. Like, they need pitching. Chicago, not the White Sox, definitely. The Cubs need pitching. They do need pitching. They lost Justin Steele for the year, and you pair him and Sandy up in that rotation next season. I don't know. I feel like those were the 2 teams to really look at early on in this whole Sandy trade debacle stuff.
Nate brought up a good point with the top 100, and that's going to lead me into our next topic here, and the brand new Baseball America Top 100 that dropped just a few days ago. I know, Kevin, you tweeted this out. 3 Marlins made it on the list. 27, Thomas White. 50, Joe Mack. 78, Robbie Snelling. And maybe I would say there's one glaring omission there, maybe from the previous one, and that's Noble Meyer. I feel like this is a guy that no, really, this is a guy that a lot of us have in our top.
Even on the last one.
Not Caba.
He's hurt.
Augustin Ramirez didn't even make this list.
Yeah,
Augustin Ramirez at least playing Major League Baseball.
That's who you mentioned, Noble Meyer.
Noble Meyer was what when he came in. A lot of our guys, 1 or 2.
He wasn't even on the top 100 last time.
I know, but why? This is my posing my question to you guys, just about the how fast Joe Mack has been soaring up. Thomas White, obviously, still top 30 prospect. Robbie Snelling now being mentioned here as the second best pitching prospect in the Marlins organization. You can't say that we did not have early on with Noblemeyer at least one of the top pitching prospects in the Marlins system. To now
Maybe,
where,
we did.
yeah,
Maybe shortly after he was drafted early on last year, we did
like
still
the
have
fall
high
from
hope.
grace from this.
Yeah, it was a struggle for him last year. Unfortunately, those struggles have permeated into this year. But I think we just have to start with Joe Mack. He was the biggest riser in their updated list for Baseball America, and rightfully so. Holy, this is just rumblings across the organization. I was able to talk to a few people, and this is like their blue chip guy. I think on some people's lists, he's their number 2, right behind Thomas White. He has really opened eyes across Major League Baseball and national outlets as well. Obviously, you can see Fangraphs as well as Baseball America getting the promotion to AAA this year and just not missing a beat, performing almost better than he was at Pensacola. Slowed down a tiny bit, but he's still 912 OPS in Jacksonville. I think it's a foregone conclusion that we'll see him in a Marlins uniform at some point this year. I just don't understand how the Marlins have 4 viable catching options. And I don't just mean, Stallings offensive type. No, you have 4 guys that are probably going to be around league average and WRC plus. It's a very exciting time, and Miami has really 2 blue chip guys in Augustine and Joe Mack. And it's like almost like Augustine, but with incredible defense behind the plate. And Joe Mack is going to be a huge game changer for this franchise.
You just have to ask yourself how much longer until he's up there, because what he's doing in AAA on both sides, offensively and defensively, is incredible. This transition for him has been like nothing, and usually that transition isn't anything crazy from double to triple. And in fact, double A is probably the toughest level in minor league baseball. So, just for him to solidify what he did in double A, and as Isaac noted, just putting up even better numbers in triple A. I know it's been 2 weeks since he got that promotion, but you got to ask yourself, when is it time? Because I know it's not going to be yet, because they're going to want to wait. But I don't think there's much more waiting to do with this guy. I wish, they would have done it. They're kind of in a little bit of a situation there with Liam Hicks. And not that Hicks has been terrible. It's just you can't send him down. You can't do much with him. Then Fortes, he's just coming back from the injury. So we'll see what they do with him. So it's a tough situation with Joe Mack. I mean, with having Joe Mack on the major league roster, but he's been fun to watch, man. And we're after this, we're going to talk about our top 30, and he's probably going to be the biggest riser, if not the second biggest riser on most. I think he's number 11 right now, or number 9 or 11.
Number 8 or number 9. We had him. Yeah. We had him right behind Davis and De Los Santos, which I regret.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, one spot behind. I just can't. I'm so excited by how good he looks as just a pure hitter. That was a question I still had last year. I knew the power was there, the defense was there. He just looks really comfortable in a lot of different hitting situations. It's just awesome. Like, he really, I think this ranking might be a little bit higher than I might have him overall, but in this system, I get it because it is so valuable to have somebody up the middle that is that valuable offensively as well. And for him to be doing this as a 22-year-old, even though he's been around a while, he's still 22. Even some people might be itching for him to make it to the big leagues. He'd be the youngest catcher in the entire big leagues if he got called up. And there's a reason why catchers usually take longer to develop, because the bat, it's hard. It's just a very demanding position for overall. And with Mack, he went through that process where he was awful in 2023. We didn't really have much expectations for him at all at that point entering last season. And all of a sudden, he just makes the mechanical adjustments he needs to make offensively to tap into the power we knew he had. And it's, again, just as an overall hitter this year, the kind of high leverage hits that he's getting with Jacksonville this year, without swinging for the fences, but still generating solid exit velos in order to find holes. It's everything. Yeah, he does really everything well except for run. He's not much of a runner down there, and he doesn't play other positions. And that's the reason why I think any conversation about a call up with him is several months away.
Yeah, I agree.
Because you can't feel they already have 3 catchers on the roster right now, and that in itself is awkward, especially if if Mack gets called up. You can't have 2 top tier prospects as part of a 3 catcher rotation. He's this is going to have to play itself out a little bit, whether it's via trade or via injury before he comes up. But yeah, he's just been, you couldn't have asked for anything more for him at the start of this season.
Well, really since coming back, like you said, Eli, I found this was our May 8th, 2024 prospect rankings. This is approximately a year ago today. We had Joe Mack ranked 25th under guys like Josh Simpson, Jacob Berry, Will Banfield, Wanda Lippers. The list goes on. I mean, it really is just insane what this guy's done in the past year. You talked about the mechanical adjustments. The glove has always been there, but I think this guy hit below the Mendoza line or around the Mendoza line in Beloit in 2023. And now he's one of the best offensive prospects in the entire organization, extra base hit machine, while still doing it all behind the plate. And like Isaac said, man, it's going to be exciting. We went from Jacob Stallings and Nick Fortes to Joe Mack and Augustine Ramirez. It's an exciting time to be a Marlins backstop.
Yeah, I personally owe an apology to Joe Mack. There was a point where I did not want him ranked on our list. He was not ranked on our list. I said I was out on Joe Mack. I thought he was not going to get it going. And we've seen the case with a lot of high school catchers just get drafted and it takes them a really long time to develop. And that was just the case with Mack. And he's so young. So it's just like, we saw the case of Will Banfield a couple years back, like thought finally got it going. And what was it, 23, sucked in 24 and not even with the organization anymore. And that's the case with a lot of high school catchers. So I do owe that apology to Joe Mack. He proved me wrong. I know Eli was always wanting to rank Joe Mack. I think he even started the hashtag rank Joe Mack. So yeah, I owe an apology to Joe Mack for sure. And I think, I'll speak for myself. I know others here were not very high on him at one point, but I'll just say, it's cool. It's really cool what he's done, and credit to him for putting in the work.
Who is the better runner, he or Ramirez? They're both
Ramirez.
Right.
I mean, well, in terms of actual base stealing aggressiveness, that Augustine's been running at a much higher clip throughout his career than Mack has been. In terms of I think it'd be pretty close between them. But it's kind of irrelevant if Mack is not comfortable even attempting steals, and that's one thing that really hasn't been throughout his career. Whereas Augustine has situationally been able, he's at least had the instincts to pick his spots and steal really efficiently. But I think in terms of actual like raw speed, they might be equals to one another. It's just a matter of whether they're comfortable using it in that situation.
You mentioned catching. I don't know if Kevin was the one who mentioned about the offensive, not having another offensive player to be traded. Would Nick Fortes be the name that you would even look at to be traded? You're talking Joe Mack, Augustine Ramirez, Liam Hicks. You can't have 4 catchers. 3 is even a stretch by some means. And would you rather trade Nick Fortes, who might have some value to other teams, and you run a 3, I don't say 3 catcher rotation, but 3 catchers on the roster with Augustine Ramirez and Joe Mack as the young guys, and you have Liam Hicks as well? Is that something you would even entertain, Kevin, by this trade deadline?
Yeah, and I think first thing we need to mention is it's really rare to see catchers get moved. Just in general, I think the last one was Danny Jansen last year got moved. He was the only one who was traded from the Rays to the Red Sox. So Nick Fortes, if he keeps this up, what he's doing, of course. I mean, you trade him. He's I think he's just now starting his arbitration years, or he's like in his 2nd or 3rd year now, or a couple years in. And he's a good defensive catcher. Like, you'll take those. Elias Diaz got, I think it was like either DFA or was traded. Something happened there. He went from one way to another, from one team to another, maybe 1 year or 2 years ago. Like, you don't see many mid-season catching trades, but Fortes fits the profile of, on a really competitive team, he's a really good number 2 catcher to have, someone who's going to hit here and there, good, to have working with a staff. So, I think that's a name you would consider to move, but I don't know if they'll do it, because it's, again, as I mentioned, you trade a catcher mid-season, not only affects the team that's moving that catcher, but the team then that's acquiring him. You're gonna have to learn a new staff, and that's not easy to do by any means. Again, catching is one of the toughest things to do in all baseball.
We'll leave that at that. 40 minutes in, we haven't even talked about the White Sox. Maybe that might be a good thing. But let's go ahead, Eli, and talk about this series. We can have the lineups, but really previewing these teams. Nate, can you give us a little bit? See, the White Sox have been maybe the butt, it feels like, of Major League Baseball the last couple of years. Struggling again this year. It just seems like they have a hodgepodge of players, players that people might not know of. And then you have Luis Robert as maybe the guy who seemingly might get traded any single day, every trade deadline. What can you talk about on this White Sox team and the Marlins and what you want to see against the White Sox? Because this seems like the easiest series so far this season for them.
You would hope so, right? I mean, they only have two guys that are OPSing above 800, and that is Mike Tauchman and I forgot the other guy, but they have Austin Slater as well. I mean, Josh Rojas, plenty of other guys from a bunch of teams that you might have heard about a couple years ago. They're likely on the White Sox right now, OPS around 600. So that's probably the best assessment of those guys. Starting pitching, pretty inconsistent. A lot of the guys that Marlins are facing too, not too hot. Tomorrow they have Bryce Wilson going 6 ERA around there. So it really is the easiest chance Marlins have to win a series all season. I mean, they've had one of the hardest, schedules to play just around a month in. So they've gone through the gauntlet. Now they have to face the White Sox in Chicago. I'm realistically hoping for 2 out of 3, but a sweep would really be great. And there's like guys Michael A. Taylor, Andrew Vaughn, who you might remember from the 2019 draft, who just went before J.J. Bleday. He was linked to the Marlins for a little bit. But yeah, man, this really is the easiest chance they've had all year. And I think anything less than 2 out of 3 would be a huge disappointment. Oh, and wait, I forgot old friend Jake Mamiya too. Can't forget about Jake Mamiya.
Yeah, I want to really quickly on Mamiya. I cannot believe how awful a hitter he has been in the big leagues when he's gotten an opportunity. This is his first extended opportunity in the big leagues, where he was their primary shortstop to begin the year. Now he's essentially been benched and limited to, as you guys just noted, emergency pitcher responsibility. A 226 OPS, not a batting average, not an on-base percentage. 226 OPS this season after having a 413 last season. His career OPS 336 and
Jesus
Christ. I remember us cheering for that trade when it happened. We were so hyped.
Do you guys remember who the Marlins got in that trade for
Belloso?
They got Belloso.
What a
that
win.
has been a landslide victory for the Marlins at this point. They're only going to use Belloso
right?
2 times through a lineup. Yeah, I am baffled that he is. I thought he would at least. I don't know. I thought he would not be the very worst hitter in all of baseball, and unfortunately, he has been.
Has his defense been anything, Eli?
Yeah, it's been solid enough for him to be on the roster at that position. It's a solid average defender at shortstop, but absolutely nothing offensively. Despite in the strikeout rate is not horrendous. He's putting the ball in play, just zero impact whatsoever, which just goes against what we saw even at the AAA level last year, where there was stretches where he was actually driving in runs at a pretty noteworthy rate. So I've just been shocked by how little they've gotten from him offensively. And as a whole, this is just a terrible offense, much as it was last year. And the thing I'll note is that Robert has looked more like himself lately. He got off to a pretty terrible start throughout the first month, but as of late, you can see more of the absolutely explosive tools that he has. He's just watching him play. He's one of the guys that just plays with so little energy. Maybe it's because of the circumstances that he's in, but you really see it a lot, how casual he is. And he'll turn it up when he wants to steal a base. And he is among the leading base stealers in Major League Baseball to this point. All the athleticism is still there, but I think the atmosphere has really taken a toll on him. All the negative vibes have seeped in for sure.
I think that list that Nate was saying where Joe Mack was 25th. I'm pretty sure Jacob Mamiya was a top 6, top 10 prospect in that same exact list. So It just shows you, how much he's fallen off since that, and just I don't know, maybe never got the consistent playing time. Now obviously he has a really good opportunity there, and just not working out, unfortunately.
Boy, Eli was not kidding. Amaya's slugging percentage is 109, and the OPS plus is -34. I don't think I've seen a slash line with as many plate appearances this poor. This is almost unfathomable that he has not been optioned. It's a 109 slugging percentage. That's incredible.
I guess for what it is worth, the one name in that lineup that has actually been a fun watch is Edgar Caro, who was acquired it was the Lucas Giolito trade. That trade really worked out well for the White Sox, trading Giolito to the Angels, and then the Angels waived him or put him on waivers. So Caro's been good, 115 OPS plus. He's their guy right now behind the plate. And then up until Kyle Teal is called up to the bigs. And we're talking about two really good catching, good catching tandem. Caro and Teal is going to be really good, and two guys who hit for a lot of power too. Caro yet to hit a homer this season, but it's been early, so he'll get some. He's a good power hitter, and so is Steele. Steele's, I mean, one of the best catching prospects in baseball.
Dice is doing well as well. Like, they have good catching situation down there in the South. He's actually leading them in WAR. Or no, Shane Smith is leading them in WAR. The other guy who I just still thought he would hit at least a little bit. I think we spoke about it on our stream last year in 2023 for the White Sox. Forgot who we had on. Forgot the gentleman's name. He was a great guy, but Andrew Vaughn just has never figured it out. Oh my goodness, man. He defensively, offensively, a -1 WAR player this early into the season. Just never found a way to hit the ball. Like he broke out a little bit. I forget which year it was for Vaughn. Remember, I wanted him over JJ Bleday. Yeah, he hit a little bit okay in 2022, but other than that, he's just been an awful big leaguer as well. That's a 3rd overall pick.
I was going to ask you, Eli, what is the bright spot on the White Sox? It's probably no one maybe here on the hitting side. That's someone in the pitching. That's someone deep in that bullpen that really gives them hope. What is the bright spot on this White Sox team, if any?
Early on, their starting pitching did get off to an awesome start this year. Shane Smith is the one that is leading their team in WAR right now, and I've seen some good outings from him, sort of. Even in his case, control is a little bit iffy, but he's preventing homers at an amazing rate so far. Unfortunately, the one veteran in the rotation was supposed to be Martin Perez, and he got a serious injury just a few weeks ago. That's going to keep him out for most of the year. So it's such an inexperienced group that they have of guys that never really had a ton of prospect pedigree in it. Man, like even I think Mike Vassell is another Rule 5 pick who entering today had a sub-1 ERA, and then today he has a really mediocre relief outing that kind of inflates his numbers again. So there's not a whole lot there either. It's just about, I guess, a couple hitters that are just coming along lately. Like Miguel Vargas lately, the overall numbers are bad, but lately he looks more like the guy he was supposed to be, where he's a really disciplined hitter. So he's going to get on base at a solid rate. Just doesn't hit for as much power as it looked like he would early on when he was in the Dodgers organization. But there's still kind of hope. He's the one that's going to at least be in the lineup, near the top of the lineup early on. Yeah, otherwise the hope is just in their farm system for the most part. Across the board, man, it's grim. It's very grim.
And I guess it's part of the reason with Perez, but they're 11th in ERA this year amongst baseball. So it's a good starting pitching staff regardless. I mean, better than what Miami's done this year. I think they're last in ERA. So yeah, but still, I mean, it's the White Sox. Nothing too crazy there. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. Losing Perez was tough. Perez could have been a really nice trade chip for them at the deadline too. I mean, if he kept doing what he was doing. So tough blow for them. But they have some young pieces, as you mentioned, Eli. Their farm system's really fun. So those guys will come up soon, and maybe in 2 or 3 years they're finally somewhat decent. So yeah.
I like that you brought that up, Kev, because, I mean, like I said, they pitched back in 2019. They were kind of on the same trajectory for a little bit. Both teams had a lot of good young pitching, good young offensive prospects. I mean, the White Sox won over 90 games in 2022, just like the Marlins made the playoffs in 23, and it all fell apart. I mean, guys like, as I talked about, Andrew Vaughn never put it together. 20 guys from that Marlins score, Brinson, Diaz, Bleday never really put it together, and now they're all back here again rebuilding. So it's a funny parallel between these two.
Yeah, can't forget the biggest one, Tim Anderson. Remember that? Marlins right there. But I wanted to also ask you, is this the biggest opportunity for the Marlins starting pitchers to really get things going this season? Are you expecting big things from Eddie, Sandy, and Max?
I mean, Sandy specifically. I mean, geez, if he can't get to this lineup, then that's when he really begins to tell you, like, you begin to worry, because it's like this is a get right start for all 3 of those pitchers, as you said, Danny. Like, Cabby was decent in his last start. Mm-hmm. Like, if he could get to that lineup, then perfect. Like, and let's remember last year, like, that White Sox team was even worse. And so were the Marlins, but the Marlins were the better team, and they almost lost that series. So it's a much needed start for Sandy to get it going. And in the ballpark that I want to say is more pitcher friendly than anything. So I mean, it's a perfect opportunity for Sandy on the road against the team that's not good at all. Marlins are objectively better than the White Sox. So yeah, this is their best opportunity to not just sweep and get back on track, but for everyone, honestly, on this team, on the pitching staff, the bullpen, to really just get back to what they should have been, last year, and set the road trip off to a good start, and finally snap losing 4 straight series. Like, geez, that road trip was terrible, and so was the homestand. It was not fun. Well, aside from the one athletics game, but yeah.
Right.
That was
On the topic of stolen bases, Robert has 15, which leads to the American League, but the rest of the team combined has only 13. It's really just about him. So as long as he is not on base, then there's not a ton of guys that are going to exploit that big weakness that this Marlins team has.
Forget Sandy. I need Max Meyer to come back here a little bit, especially after he got hit in the wrist. I know no one's really mentioned that against the Athletics, and he did not get a single strikeout in that start on Saturday in the City Connect debut game. So he's the guy I can almost, I don't want to jinx anything, but I can almost guarantee Sandy will give you 6 innings, however many runs, he'll give you 6. Cabrera, I don't know how he's going to fare, but Max Meyer, I think he's the one to watch for this series. I need him to come back and sort of resemble I don't need 14 strikeouts. I don't need 9 strikeouts. Just, sort of miss some more bats and generate some whiffs and maybe throw a little bit, some less sliders, because his slider was not doing what it was doing at all early on in the season on Saturday. That slider was getting hit the hardest I've ever seen it get hit since his, 2022 debut. So that's the Marlins starting pitching matchup I'm looking forward to the most.
Well, to be honest, I mean, all 3 of them need to get it going. Let's be honest. But yes, I agree. Like, Max did not look like Max that last start at all. And they won, but it took a miracle to win that game.
I think it would just be a bid for Eddie after what he almost went a quality start last time against an A's lineup and getting an even worse lineup with the White Sox. And then he pitched against them last July, and he only went 3 2/3. So if he can get a quality start, at least just go 5 again and continue showing good command and, just continue to pick it up after another rough start to the year and after the injury in spring. If Eddie can get back on track to be a bid for this Marlins rotation, because like we talked about for the past couple of weeks, they need it bad.
Eli, I think it's a good time to go to prediction. I think we exhausted everything we can mention about the starting rotation and the White Sox and maybe how the Marlins will fare. So we can get ready for prediction time. I know a little early. It's an off day, but maybe you can give some detailed explanations on why we picked this series.
Let's do it.
This is prediction time.
I don't want to toot my own horn.
Oh, I pressed it too early. I see what happened. I'm playing around with some new settings here in order to make that transition cleaner, but I have to wait until after the video plays. Let's try it one more time just to get the whole thing.
This is prediction time.
I don't want to toot my own horn here, but I'm really good at this.
So there is a look at the prediction time leaderboard entering this series, where we got Super Sub Lucas on top, Daniel Rodriguez and Kevin are tied now for best among our staffers. But what we do here is we take predictions from our super subs, our Fish on First staffers, our live stream guests as well. So if you are not a super sub, you can go to fishonfirst.com/subscriptions to sign up. We keep track of your stuff all series long, keep it graded, how many games the Marlins are going to win, who's going to be the series MVP as determined by win probability added. A lot of people picked up points last series. The Dodgers won, and this one, as you might expect, I think there's going to be a lot of people actually taking an optimistic outlook on how this team's going to go, but that's up to us to decide.
Eli, you made the cutoff. Exactly 23. I don't know if that was.
Well, I changed the cutoff to fit myself. I could have cut it off after 19 if I wanted to. So, but yeah, I don't want to stretch it much bigger than this so far. So overall on the table, we have over 50 people so far that have contributed at various points.
Let's get things started here. Let's get that music going, and we can go on with our leadoff hitter.
Mm-hmm.
All right, starting us off for this prediction time for the Marlins against the White Sox, as always, Mr. Well, I guess we'll have Isaac do it.
All right, Miami. I like batting leadoff. I think that the Marlins are going to finally salvage a series here and take 2 out of 3 in the south side of Chicago. And I think Sandy Alcantara is going to put together easily the most lengthy start of his season so far.
Ooh, Kevin.
Marlins will sweep. Got it. They're going to get it back. They're going to get it going again. They're going to get a couple dubs. And Chicago start off the road trip on the right way. And Isaac took my guy, so I'm going to stick with it. Sandy will be the series MVP. It's a start that he needs. He really needs this. He needs to get it going again. At least look like the Sandy of before. And I think, this is the perfect opportunity for him to do that. So Marlins sweep. Sandy's the series MVP.
All right, I'm gonna go here. Kevin says I'm not optimistic about the Marlins when I do my predictions, but I am gonna be for this one. I'm not going with the White Sox. Marlins take 2 out of 3. You guys mentioned pitching. I'm gonna go on the other side. I'm gonna go at batter. I think this White Sox rotation is not gonna get the best of the Marlins. The Marlins are gonna tee off against the White Sox. I'm gonna go with Kyle Stowers. Hits 2 home runs this series for my MVP. Nate.
The White Sox just got swept at a 4-game set by the Royals. I think they're going to be on a 7-game losing streak after this series. The Marlins will sweep in Chicago. If your season repeat, you guys talked about saying it, but I think Matt Meyer is going to take home the MVP this time. I think he's going to deal tomorrow, and just watch out, Chicago. He's going to be pissed off.
Mr. Eli.
I'll go with Marlins winning 2 out of 3 in this series. Several slumping hitters that I think are capable of really breaking out this weekend. I'll go with Connor Norby in this one. Debating between him and a couple other guys, but I think Connor Norby's going to have himself a very productive series and to get back on track in what's been an underwhelming season so far. But he's a really talented guy, and the Marlins will snap that serious losing streak they've had.
All right, that's going to do it here for prediction time. A lot of optimism for the Marlins, a lot of Marlins picks. Hopefully the Marlins can continue this trend for Marlins victories. Maybe they could do that against the White Sox, but that's going to do it for this edition of FOF Live. We are presented by About the Fans. As always, check out About the Fans for the brand new FOF merchandise collection. FOF 10 for 10% off your order at checkout for myself, Danny Rodriguez, Eli Sussman, Nate Karsmer, Mr. Isaac Azu, Kevin Barad. This is FOF Live. As always, go Fish.
Fish on First has partnered with About the Fans to launch a merchandise collection. Rep the FOF logo in more Marlins-inspired apparel. Find it all at aboutthefans.com. Enter coupon code FOF10 at checkout to get 10% off your order. FOF10 for a 10% discount.